Hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'm going to continue the series called Durable Python Machine Learning Library. So पिछले वीडियो में हम लोग pandas डेटा फ्रेम, pandas सीरीज एंड pandas का कुछ बेसिक ऑपरेशन के बारे में डिस्कस किया था. तो ये है पार्ट नंबर 2. सो इसमें हम लोग कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक के बारे में बात करेंगे. बेसिकली वी आर गोइंग टू रीडिंग सम फाइल फ्रॉम अ डायरेक्टरी एंड ऑल्सो डू सम ऑपरेशन ऑन दैट. सो इस वीडियो काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट होने वाला है. सो पेन और पेपर लेके बैठो. So this video is a combination of the Hindi and English, but most of the time I'm trying to use the English word. So हर हर महादेव बोल के स्टार्ट करते हैं वीडियो. सो पिछले वीडियो में हम लोग जाना था पार्ट 1 पे कैसे हम पांडास इंस्टॉल कर सकते हैं. इसके बाद डेटा फ्रेम वगैरह, सीरीज वगैरह और कुछ बेसिक ऑपरेशन हम देखा था वहाँ पर. सो यहाँ पर हम देखेंगे हम कैसे वन फाइल रीड कर सकते हैं हमारा डायरेक्टरी से. इसके बाद हम कुछ फाइल वगैरह भी बनाएंगे यहाँ पर, लाइक हाउ कैन यू रीड द सीवी फाइल, हाउ कैन यू रीड द JSON फाइल, XML एंड ऑल्सो द HTML फाइल. सो दिक्कत का कोई बात नहीं, मैं अच्छा से पढ़ाऊंगा, लेकिन आपको ध्यान देना पड़ेगा यहाँ पर. और एक बात, आपको सब्सक्राइब एंड लाइक भी करना पड़ेगा. सो ऑल राइट, सो यू ऑलरेडी इंस्टॉल द pandas library on our system. So now what I can do, you can simply import it here. Let's say I'm going to import here the pandas spd, import pandas spd. Then what I can do is we are simply going to read one file from a directory. So there are so many files format are actually available, like CSV file, XML file, JSON file, HTML file. If you are working in a marketplace or a company as a data scientist, maybe you know about that, right? So let's say I assume that you don't know about the CSV file or what is the JSON file, what is the HTML or the XML file, right? So I have one file inside my directory that's called train.csv. So let's say I am trying to call it inside my program. So how can I actually call it? So this is one CSV file. So in the pandas, there is a method that's called read CSV. So you need to do that pd.read CSV. So read CSV. Then what I need to do? I need to give here the file path. I need to give here the file path. So let's say our file name is train.csv. Then what I can do? I can simply store it inside a variable. So let's say df equal to pd.csv. So this is nothing but how can I read a CSV file from a directory using this read CSV method. Now inside this read CSV method, there are so many arguments are available. If I click here and use the shift tab from my keyboard, and if I export it, you can see here so many arguments are available. We're going to exploring not all of them, a few of them, which one is really important. So you can see there a property that's called separator, SCP. By default, it's no default. Actually, by default is comma, because CSV means comma separated below. If I try to see this, that's a df.head for checking the first five row. You can see it actually show me the 5 row, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 row and 81 columns inside our data frame. I mean our data set, right? So this is nothing but one data frame. Why? Because there are multiple number of row and multiple number of column. So if I check my CSV file, if I go on here, let's say CSV file. Okay, where is it? Control tab. Aja. Oh, yeah. Train.csv. You can see all the file are separated by comma. That means this is a CSV file. And also when the file lines is ended, I mean backslash n, another file, I mean another column or another row is or property is started. Again, see, when one file property is end, the backslash n, I mean next line, then another file is created. So this is how the one CSV file is created. Now my question is, how can you create a CSV file? Just pause the video and think, how can you do that? Obviously, I know you thinking about the Excel, that using Excel you can create a CSV file. Obviously, you can create it. Now the question, how can you do it using Python programming language? That's my question, right? Because we know when one file is separated with comma and having one backslash n, this is one CSV file. Now you're going to using the same technique to create a CSV file. So let's see and go on here. So यहाँ पर आते हैं, हम लोग क्या करते हैं, कुछ टैब वगैरह लेते हैं इसके बाद. So हम तो देखा है यहाँ पर df.head देने के बाद यहाँ पर हमारा जो रो है ना, 5 row और 81 columns वो दिखा रहे हैं यहाँ पर. So let's say see some the types of the df. So is it a series or data frame? Obviously a data frame. It's a pandas data frame. Now what I can do, you can do simply creating here a CSV data frame, I mean CSV file. CSV file, right? Using our Python programming language. So how can we do that? Let's assume a variable that's called data. Then inside that, we are going to taking some value with having the comma separated. Let's say I have the column 1, let's say column 1, then I have my column 2, then I have my column 3, then I have my column 4, right? Then what I can do, we can simply give here the backslash n that we discuss about that in the CSV file. That's the backslash n, right? Now after that, all the value are इट्स एक्चुअली पांडास यहाँ पर लेगा क्या, ये तो शायद हमारा क्या है ना, सीधी फाइल है, क्योंकि कॉमा सेपरेट है, इसका बाद है बैक स्लैश एन, तो वो तो इसको एज अ सीधी फाइल रीड करेगा, राइट? सो इसका बाद हम कुछ प्रॉपर्टी वगैरह देते हैं यहाँ पर, लेट्स से 1, 2, 3, 4, इसका बाद देते हैं बैक स्लैश एन, इसका बाद और कुछ लेते हैं, लेट्स से कोमा, ओके, इसका बाद देते हैं बैक स्लैश एन दे दिया, इसका बाद देते हैं हम लोग 5, इसके बाद देते हैं 6, 7, 8, ऐसे देते हैं हम लोग, राइट? So now what I can do, you can simply shift enter, or you can also click here to run the file. Then what I can do, you can simply use your pd dot read csv. now इसका अंदर हम लोग देते हैं डेटा. देखो एक बात बहुत ध्यान से देखना, राइट? let's make it one df1, shift enter. देखो कुछ एरर वगैरह आ गया है यहाँ पर, देखो ये बोल रही invalid file path or buffet object type class tuple. Now the question is, when we call this read CSV file, we need to give here a in memory file location. In memory file location. Again, in memory file location. देखो यहाँ पर train dot जो CSV file है ना, वो मेरा directory का अंदर है, इसको बोलते हैं in memory file location. लेकिन जो डेटा है ना, वो तो मेरा फाइल मेमोरी में नहीं है, राइट? वो तो मेरा फाइल मेमोरी नहीं है, वो तो मेरा प्रोग्राम पे है. लेकिन हम इसको कैसे फाइल मेमोरी में कन्वर्ट करेंगे? हाँ, कैसे करेंगे हम लोग? कैसे करेंगे हम लोग? यूज करेंगे एक प्रॉपर्टी दैट्स कॉल्ड लाइब्रेरी दैट्स कॉल्ड फ्रॉम आईओ, आई मीन इनपुट फ्रॉम आवर मेमोरी, राइट? सो लेट्स से input string IO, because this is one string. If I try to check this data type, let's say type, बहुत ध्यान से देखना भाई, अच्छे से पढ़ा रहा हूँ. देखो ये एक टपल है, लेकिन इसका टपल के अंदर क्या है? स्ट्रिंग वगैरह है. तो यहाँ पर इसलिए बोल रहे हैं क्या, क्लास इज ए टपल. तो वो तो टपल है, लेकिन हमारा जो रीड सीधे फाइल है ना, वो तो क्या रीड करेगा? फाइल रीड करेगा, राइट? इन मेमोरी फाइल, राइट? तो इसके लिए हमको इसको कन्वर्ट करना पड़ेगा इन मेमोरी फाइल के अंदर. सो यहाँ पर हम देंगे स्ट्रिंग, ओहो भाई स्ट्रिंग आजा आयो, इसका अंदर हम लोग देंगे इसको डेटा. आप देखते हैं, ओके, इट्स नॉट डिफाइंड, इसको भी रन करना पड़ेगा. ओके, इनिशियल मस्ट बी स्ट्रिंग और नॉट ए टपल. ओके, देखते हैं हम यहाँ पर क्या गड़बड़ किया है. ओके, गड़बड़ तो हम लोग किया है, यहाँ पर कुछ स्पेस वगैरह दे दिया. एक्चुअली मैं मेरी इच्छा से किया था, क्योंकि आपको समझ चाहिए, आप तो बोल भी कर सकते हैं ना, इसलिए तो मैं तो बोल कर दिया यहाँ पर आपको सिखाने के लिए. तो शिफ्ट एंटर दे दिया. इसके बाद देखो अभी भी वो रीड नहीं कर रही है. लेकिन क्यों? मेरा क्वेश्चन है क्यों? क्योंकि यहाँ पर आप एक कोमा भी डाल दिया, इसलिए. देखो मैं तो बोल कर रहा हूँ कि आप सीख सकते, इसलिए. नाउ इट्स रीड इट परफेक्टली. नाउ इफ आई ट्राई टू चेक दिस आउट, df1, लेट्स से df1 डॉट हेड. नाउ देखो रीड हो गया. देखो पिछली बार मैंने जब मशीन लर्निंग सीखा था ना, मैंने 1 और 2 साल पहले, मैंने भी सेम भूल किया था. यहाँ पर कोमा डाल दिया, इसका बाद वहाँ पर स्पेस भी डाल दिया, तो इसलिए मैं यहाँ पर भी करा. तो दिक्कत का वही बात नहीं. देखो ये रीड हो गया है, राइट? वी कन्वर्टेड दिस डेटा फाइल इनटू आवर इन मेमोरी फाइल लोकेशन. नाउ इट्स ट्राइंग टू रीड दिस फाइल. Now you can see all the file is loaded. So this is how you can create a file, a CSV file, using your Python programming language. Now if I try to use the shift tab again from my keyboard and explore this, you can see here there's another property that's called use columns. Let's say I am trying to use the just column 1 and the column 2. Let's say you have large number of data set having the 81 columns. Now you are trying to working with these few columns, let's say 5 columns. You just wanted to use these 5 columns. So how can you do that? How can you work on that? Because this is quite a big data set. You are trying to explore this data set to the 5 row or the 5 column like that. So how can you do that? How can you do that? You can use the property that's called use columns, right? So now let's see, try to use this one. Let's say use calls, and I'm trying to using which one? I'm trying to use the column number 1 and all to trying to use the column number 2. Let's say column number 2, right? I'm trying to use this one. So now let's check this. You can see column number 1 and the column number 2 is printed. Column number 1 and the column number 2 is printed. If I remove this out, let's try to copy this out, and I'm just going to remove this one and try to run this file. You can see here all the 4 column and the 2 row is printed. Now let's say I'm trying to paste it here and try to make it df2 and see that. Let's say df2 dot head, right? And you can see column 2, column 1 and the column 2 is printed, but column 3 and 4 is not printed. Column 3 and the 4 is not printed. So this is how you can also working with this data also. Let's say I'm going to copy this one, train.csv. Let's say I'm going to paste it here, and let's say df.head. So this is the our data set having 81 column. Now I am trying to working with this 5 column, just 5 columns. So how can I do that? Simply what you can do, we can simply copy this out. Okay, don't copy this out. Let's go on here. Let's say use the columns, and which column I'm trying to use here? Let's say I'm trying to use here 5 columns. It's 5 columns. Simple. So what I can do, I'm going to simply paste it here, and I'm going to make it inside one single bracket. I'm going to single column, not bracket actually. So let's make it here. Done. अब शिफ्ट एंटर डालते हैं. देखो 5 जो है ना, 5 कॉलम्स यहाँ पर आ गया. नाउ यहाँ पर आप काम कर सकते हो. You can also do this work on that, right? So this is how the use column actually work. Now the question is, let's say I am trying to save this data set, just this data set in my directory as a CSV file. So how can I do that? How can I do that? Yes, you can use a property that's called toCSV. So in order to do that, you need to use here pd.toCSV, and you need to give here one file name. Let's say I'm trying to give here a file name that's called test.csv. And what I can do, I'm going to simply shift enter pd.toCSV. Some pandas has no attribute toCSV. Okay, pd.csv it's make into df.csv because हम लोग तो इस डेटा फ्रेम का कर रहे हैं ना, इसलिए. So df.tocsv test.csv. Now if I go on here, okay, यहाँ पर जाते हैं test.csv फाइल. देखो यहाँ पर हमारा फाइल जो है ना वो एक्सपोर्ट हो चुका है. id, ms subclass, ms zoning, lot frontage, lot area and also state, right? लेकिन यहाँ पर एक दिक्कत है ना. देखो यहाँ पर 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 जो इंडेक्स नंबर है ना वो हमारे एक्चुअल डेटा सेट में नहीं है. हमारा जो एक्चुअल डेटा सेट है ना वहाँ पर नहीं है. देखो ये हमारा एक्चुअल डेटा सेट है, यहाँ पर इंडेक्स नंबर नहीं है, यहाँ पर है आईडी नंबर. लेकिन जो आईडी नंबर है ना वो तो डुप्लीकेट हो गया जो इंडेक्स नंबर है ना. तो हम क्या कर सकते हैं, इसको काम कर सकते हैं इंडेक्स इक्वल टू फॉल्स. इंडेक्स इक्वल टू फॉल्स जो प्रॉपर्टी है ना, इंडेक्स इक्वल टू फॉल्स कर सकते हैं. नाउ जाते यहाँ पर देखो test.csv, देखो इंडेक्स गायब हो गया, इंडेक्स गायब हो गया. So this is how you can also handle that the indexes when you save the file, right? So ऐसे काम करते हैं ना, ऐसे काम करते हैं. Now you can working on this data set test.csv. So you can also check this data type of the data set, right? So let's say I am trying to copy this out. I'm just going to copy this out, copy the same data set, and now what I can do, I can simply add here another one. Let's say another one. इसके बाद यहाँ पर जाते हैं, इसके बाद इसको करते हैं 15, इसको करते हैं 16, इसको 17 करते हैं, इसको 18 करते हैं. ओके, इसको बोलते हैं let's say data 1. ओके, shift enter. So now what I can do, we can simply use our pd.read csv. इसका अंदर हम लोग देते हैं हमारा डेटा, लेकिन इसका अंदर स्ट्रिंग आई के अंदर, स्ट्रिंग आई के अंदर, क्योंकि हमको इसको इन मेमोरी फाइल लोकेशन में एलोकेट करना है. इसके बाद यहाँ पर हमको क्या देना पड़ेगा, इसको लोड करते हैं. तो लोड तो हो चुका है, लोड तो हो चुका है. So let's say try to check is the information regarding that data. So let's say data 1 equal to data.read csv. So if I try to check the data type of that, I mean वहाँ पर इंटीजर है और फ्लोटिंग नंबर है, कुछ कुछ को अगर है ना, so let's say data dot info for checking the information regarding your data set. Okay, data dot, okay, data one dot info. Okay, now you can see all the files data type is nothing but integer 64, int 64. Let's try to make it out 15.00, right? So आप देखते हैं क्या होता है, लेकिन कोई चेंज वगैरह नहीं हुआ, कोई चेंज वगैरह नहीं हुआ। इंट 64 है, राइट? इसको भी बना देते हैं 5.00, देखो इसको बना देते हैं 1.00, देखो इन 64 में है, बाय डिफॉल्ट इन 64 में है। लेकिन हम क्या कर सकते हैं, इसका डेटा जो है ना टाइप को, इसको हम लोग कन्वर्ट भी कर सकते हैं, इसका कॉपी करते हैं यहाँ से। सो हम क्या करेंगे, यहाँ पर जाएंगे, इसके बाद इसको बोलेंगे क्या, डी टाइप, इसको बोलते हैं डी टाइप। जो प्रॉपर्टी है ना, इसको देखने के लिए आपको शिफ्ट टैब प्रेस करना पड़ेगा, आपका जो कीबोर्ड है ना यहाँ पर। सो वहाँ पर हम देख सकते हैं डी टाइप वगैरह है, देखो डी टाइप वगैरह है। तो हम क्या कर सकते हैं, इसका डेटा टाइप को चेंज भी कर सकते हैं। लेट्स से मेरा डेटा टाइप आप है इंटीजर 64 में, हम इसको ऑब्जेक्ट में चेंज कर सकते, चेंज करेंगे, राइट? सो ऑब्जेक्ट मीन इज नथिंग बट ओनली स्ट्रिंग। सो हम कैसे करेंगे, ऐसे करेंगे। so, इसके बाद लिखते हैं यहाँ पर डेटा वन डॉट हेड, ओके, डेटा डॉट वन डॉट इफो। देखो अब कन्वर्ट हो चुका है ऑब्जेक्ट में। तो आप यहाँ को इसको फ्लोट में भी कन्वर्ट कर सकते हो, अब हो गया फ्लोट 64 में। ऐसे ही कन्वर्ट करते हैं, ऐसे ही कन्वर्ट करते हैं। आप यहाँ पर चेक भी कर सकते हो, यहाँ पर कोई नाल वैल्यू है और नहीं, देखो देखो। सो इस नाल ये तो हम देख चुके हैं ना पार्ट 1 पे, डॉट सम। अरे आजा बेटा, कोई नाल वैल्यू नहीं है यहाँ पर। ओके, तो पार्ट 1 देख लो, वहाँ पर हम इसके बारे में और डिटेल्स कुछ डिस्कस किया वहाँ पर, वो काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट है यहाँ पर। लेट्स से आई एम ट्राइंग टू एक्सेस द column value for the column value 1. Let's say I'm trying to access it from here. So how can I access it? Simple, I can use here our data 1, then इसका बाद यहाँ पर देना पड़ेगा हमारा column number 1, राइट? इसका बाद हम यहाँ पर इंडेक्स वगैरह भी देख सकते हैं, देखो 1.00, अच्छा से हो गया, अच्छा से हो गया। देखो कैसे तुम इसको भी एलोकेट कर सकते हो, और 0 है, इसके बाद 1 दो, लेट्स से आई एम गोइंग टू गिव हियर 1, 5.00, ऐसे तुम एक्सेस कर सकते हो यहाँ से वैल्यू, राइट? तो दिस इज हाउ यू कैन एक्सेस द वैल्यू फ्रॉम योर CSV फाइल आल्सो, राइट? सो नाउ हम देखेंगे, लेट्स से आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक दिस column 2 value to be floating point number and column number 3 in a object. सी यहाँ पर हम जब डेटा टाइप दे रहे हैं ना, यहाँ पर जब हम पुट कर रहे हैं, यहाँ पर सब कुछ कन्वर्ट हो रहे हैं फ्लोट की तरह में। If I try to check this information regarding your data, let's say info, देखो all are converted into float 64. Let's say I'm trying to convert this column 2 into the integer or column 4 into the object. Now the question is, how can I do that? How can you do that? Yes, we can also do that using a method called dictionary, right? Dictionary. So dictionary के अंदर हम लोग देंगे हमारा की एंड वैल्यू पेयर, एज ए की एंड वैल्यू पेयर आपको इनपुट देना पड़ेगा यहाँ पर। सो लेट्स से गिव हियर, लेट्स से आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक दिस column 1 should be the integer. Let's say column 1 should be in an integer. Okay, integer देना दे देंगे। Let's say I am trying to make this column 2 should be in a floating point number, and let's say comma, and then what I can do, we can try to make this column 3 into the objects. Let's say objects, object, and also trying to make this column 4 to the integer. Let's say integer. So now if I'm trying to run the file, you can see here the column 2 value is converted into float 64, and the column 3 is converted into objects, and the column 4 value is right now the integer 32. This is how you can also convert your all the file in a special in a data type. So this is how you can actually convert them. You can also check the data type of each column. Let's say data1.d type. You can also check like this way. You can also do this out. Okay, यहाँ पर कुछ error वगैरह आ रहे हैं, डेटा टाइप में डेटा टाइप्स होगा। Okay, that's it. अब column 1 के है in 32 कॉलम 2 पे है फ्लोट 64, कॉलम 3 पे है ऑब्जेक्ट, इसका बाद है कॉलम 4 के अंदर इन 32, राइट। बहुत अच्छा से आ रहे हैं, बहुत अच्छा से आ रहे हैं। तो यहाँ पर आप हम एक काम भी कर सकते हैं, यहाँ पर हम एक काम भी कर सकते हैं। लेट्स से आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक दिस 1 to the index number, I mean just the index, and also 5 as the index and 15 as the index. I'm trying to make this column 1 as the index. So okay, let's make this out as the index. So let's say index. So let's try to run this file now. Okay, let's file is running. Okay, also try to make this one as the index, right? Index. Okay, and we can also check that. Okay, the problem is the column was is not changes. Okay, let's say we're trying to make this as a data 1. Okay, it's data 1, right? So let's try to run this file now. Okay, now you can see we get some error. And the question is why this error? Initial value must be or string or not or none, not a data frame. देखो यहाँ पर हम लोग जब इसको रीड करें ना यहाँ से, we are going to convert them into the data frame. Then we again read this CSV file as a data frame. So that's why we got this kind of error. That is called initial value must be string or none, not a data frame. So when you're trying to read a file and again you are going to read the file, don't do this kind of mistake. Don't do this kind of mistake. So now what you need to do? What you need to do? You can simply either use this one or either use this one. So now what I can do? I can simply cut this. Okay, not add. Uh, cut this one and also this one and also this one. Now if I'm trying to run this now you can see error is gone. Now you can see error is gone. Now you can check that all the value index and also the data type of that. Now what I can do, I am going to simply trying to making these index column as the index column that you see earlier. I mean like that, like that. So for that what I can do, we can simply read this is a file as the index number. Then we can give here another property that's called the index column. Index column equal to, let's say I need to give a 0. I mean first one. Okay, again I got this error. Index column, I think we can, okay, yes, now you can see here we make this index column as the index of our data set. So now if I try to check this one, data one dot head, then you can see this index is right now converted into our data frame index, our data frame index. Now you can't see it, you can see it, you cannot see it here, right? So यहाँ पर देखो, यहाँ पर इंडेक्स तो आपको नहीं दिख रही है, जो है ना वो ऑलरेडी इंडेक्स में कन्वर्ट हो चुका है. So this is how you can also convert your index column, I mean your column as the index. You can also convert this id column as the index also. You can also do that. So for that, what you have to do, you can simply give here your file name and you can use the index column equal to 0. This is how you can do that. Now you can see here 18 columns, एक column हटा चुका है यहाँ पर और index बन चुका है. So this is how you can also do that. You can also convert them into index column, right? Now we can also do the operations that we do earlier. You can use the use column also. You can also do the use columns here. Let's say I'm trying to use the use column. I mean this one. कहाँ चला गया? यहाँ पर है, यहाँ पर है. कॉपी करते इसको, यहाँ पर जाते हैं, इसके बाद यहाँ पर पेस्ट कर देते हैं. So you can see this id is converted into the index column and also all the column are left. Now all the column are left. So that's it for how can you read the CSV file from your directory and do some operation on that. Now we're going to see here the another file extension that's called the JSON. So what is JSON? So JSON means JavaScript object notation. So there are so many NoSQL database are available like MongoDB. So when you are working on a NoSQL database, you can get some the data on the request as a JSON format. Now as a data scientist, you don't need to also handle this data because right now in the market there are so many NoSQL databases are available. So that's why you need to also learn the JSON. And also you need to know that how can you read the file from the JSON. So now what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to paste here one code. So this is nothing but the structure of a JSON file. It looks just look like the Python dictionary, right? So if I am trying to run the file from here and it will load it. Now if you're trying to load this data file from your data variable, you need to using here a method called pd.readJSON, not CSV because this is a JSON file. You can also verify this one. Just copy this one and you need to go on a website that's called JSON lint. Okay, so just go on Google and search for JSON lint, and first link will appear here. You can also select this one. Just select this one, and you need to paste here your JSON file that you copied. I mean JSON file structure that you copied. Okay, remove this one. This single colon single it's called what it's called. I click at the validity JSON, right? Single quotation, and you can see a JSON is valid. Now you can simply use this JSON file in your Python program. So now what I can do, we can simply load this using pd.readJSON. So for that, you can see that pd.readJSON. And what I can do, we can simply pass here our data. That's the data. Shift enter. Now you can see here, it will automatically convert this JSON file into a pandas data frame. If I'm trying to check this data, let's say data type, let's say type of this data. So this is nothing but one string. It's just nothing but one string. If I try to check this type of this df, let's say df, and if I try to check this type, let's say df, and run, and you can see here this is nothing but one data frame. It's nothing but a data frame. That's mean when you read a file in a JSON format, it will automatically convert them into a data frame. Now if I try to check it out, let's say df.head, like that, and you can also see them. You can see the employee name Chandudhar and email also here, and also having the job profile. Now you can see there is one thing actually, the title, and the title too is not actually printed with another column. It's not printed in another column, right? So we can also do it in the later on. That is called JSON normalizations. So this also one part when you are trying to get some nested JSON file. So that's why you need to using the JSON normalization. But we will, when you go deeper, then we discuss about that, right? Now you're going to see that the column property, I mean inside this property, that have a property called the orient, right? It's also called the orientation. If I click here and use the shift tab, and if I explode this, and you can see here it have another argument that's called the parameter as argument. It's called the orient. It's nothing but for the orientation of your data, and also have the d type, the data type, and all are mostly same, right? So let's try to see the orient one. So what I can do, we can simply copy this out. I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to pass it here, and I'm going to use this one. That's called orient, right? Let's see if I try to give my orient as the index. So index mean it is working based on your row value. So if I am shift and enter and try to check the df, and you can see here right now the data is printed in the form of row. You can see here this is the row and having the value. It's the row and having the value, and job profile and having the value, right? If you try to change it as a record, let's say I'm trying to make it records. So this is how it's look like the same as it is, the by default one, right? You can also make it columns. Let's say columns. So you can now see all are same. That's mean records and the column are mostly same. But when you're trying to make it the index, that means it is working based on the index number. I mean row number. So let's copy this out and paste it here, so that when you get this code in the GitHub link, you can understand all the things from here. Index. Then I'm going to make it here the column and records, like that. So this is how it actually work, this orient function on this JSON data. So now let's try to make another data for testing one. So let's say I'm trying to import here the pandas as a PD. Let's import pandas as PD. Then I'm trying to create a data frame using this pd.dataframe. That's a pd.data frame, like that. So this is how you can actually creating the data frame in Python, and we already discussed about that in the part number 1. Now what I can do, we can simply going to create here some nested data. I mean nested, having the one row and the one column, right? Like that, 2 row or 2 column. Let's get this one, right? So let's say go on here and try to give our data. So let's say we have the value of the A, then we have our value of the B, then let's say we have the another value. It's called 3 row and 3 column, like that. So let's say C. Now what I can do, I am simply going to copy this one. This one, okay, let's copy this one, and I'm going to paste it here. Just copy and paste. Now if I'm trying to change this out, let's say it's called D, and let's make it E, and also let's make it F, right? So this is how you can actually creating the data frame. Now if I'm trying to save it inside the folder that's called data 01 and shift enter, and if I try to see the data 01, so this is nothing but one data frame is created. Now you can also change your row number and also the column number. Now you can see it having the 3 column and 2 row. Now what I can do, we can simply give the name of that. So how can we give? So we can give based on the index number. Let's say give our index, and then we can give here our row number. So let's say this is nothing but our row. So how many indexes we have? We have 2 row and 3 column. So let's say row 1, and we have the another one, it's called the row number 2. Okay, not here. And we have the row number 2. slowly जा रही है यहाँ पर. इसका बात है क्या? Columns, right? ओके फाइन. इसके बाद हमारे पास कॉलम कितना है? 3 कॉलम. यहाँ पर देना है कॉलम 1, इसके बाद कॉलम 2, इसके बाद है कॉलम 3, राइट? लाइक दिस वन, कॉलम 3. Okay, so now you can see here it's converted into column 1, column 2, and the column 3, right? You can also use here the df.head, but when you are using the BS Code, when you are using the Jupyter Notebook or the Google Colab, you don't need to give here the head. But if you are using the BS Code, you need to obviously give here the data01.head like that. Now my question is, how do you save these in your file as a JSON format? Let's say I'm trying to convert this data frame into a JSON. See, we first convert this JSON into the data frame. Now you're going to convert this data frame into a JSON. So that's why creating this data frame. So to do that, simply like the CSV, to CSV, now it's converted to the to JSON. So how can you do that? You can simply use here data01.to JSON, to JSON. Now it will convert them into JSON, into the JSON. Now you can see here column 1, and it having the row 1, I mean this row 1 and value is the A, and row 2 value is the D. Then you can see the column 1 value is the column 2 value is a row 1 value is a B, just like it is actually created, right? So this is how you can actually save your data in a JSON format. Now you can also give here the orientation. If I try to copy this out and give here this orientation that we see earlier, this orientation, you can also do that. So let's say I'm going to copy this one, and I'm going to give here the orientation based on the columns. Now you can see here all the columns are here as a key, and all the value, then having the columns and their value, and their columns and their value, right? So you can also change it out. If I try to make it index, then you can see here row 1 based on the index number, I mean row number, it having the column A value, column 2 value, and the column 3 value, and all the value, it's having the 2 index. So this is how you can also convert your data frame into the JSON, right? You can also use here the records. So let's say records. So this is how you can actually convert them in the records. You can also using here a method, it's called the split. I don't know it's working out here or not. Yeah, it's working. You can see here it having the columns, it having the columns name and all the columns name, and it had the index name, I mean index number, which one is the index, and having the data. You can see here that all the data are available as just like when you are using the split one. You can also make it as a schema when you are working in the MySQL data. Let's copy this out, and I'm trying to make it the table. Let's say make it table. Then you can get a schema of that, right? You can get a schema of that. So this is how the you can convert your data, I mean into the data frame into the JSON, and you can also do the do some pre-processing on that. How can you convert them into the based on the index number, based on the orientations, I mean index records in the columns, and you can also generate the schema. Now you can also get back the schema from here. So how can you go? You can just simply copy this file from here, copy this one, and you can create here another, let's call SC, and paste it here and shift enter. Now you can also convert this schema, into a JSON. So to do that, you need to use here pd.read JSON. You need to pass here the schema, and you need to give here also the orientation. So orientation should be the table. So let's say table. Let's see this working or not. Now you can see here it get back to the table again, right? So this is how it's really work. Now what I can do, we can simply going to load here another big data from our directory. You can see we have the train.csv file. We're going to simply read it here, right? So in order to read that, simply you can use here pd.read.csv, read CSV, because this is a CSV file. Then what I can do, you can give here my path train.csv, and let us store it inside the variable that's called df equal to, right? So let's see df.head to see the data. So it's having the 5 row, the first 5 rows appear. Now what I can do, you can simply convert this df into the JSON. So you need to do that. What I can do, we can simply say that df dot to JSON, right? And pass here our orient. Let's say I'm going to convert them orientation based on the row number. So let's index. So it's try to convert them. Now you can see here, it actually converted this data based on the index number. I mean this row index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is how it indexes with 0. So if I try to make it as column, so let's say columns like that. And now you can see all the value are converted based on the columns number. So this is how you can actually converted your data in a JSON format. Now my question is, when we read this file, this data file, right? You can see we have a title, but we can't extract this title from here. It's not showing up. Why? Because we need to normalize our data. Our data. That's called the JSON normalizations. When you have the nested file in a JSON file, that's called nested. So let's see, try to load it here. Let's try to paste it here. Now if I'm trying to check the data type, so let's say try to check this type of data. Let's say type of data. Okay, you can see this is nothing but a string. This is nothing but a string. So what we need to do, we need to just remove this what is called his quotations. Okay, a single quotation, and to convert them as a list, right? I will just convert them as a list and also remove this list from here when you're trying to do the normalize. So now if I read it and try to check our data type, now it's a list. Now inside the list, you can access the value from here. So this is nothing but one JSON. So how can you read it? Simply you can using here the pd.read JSON, and you can simply pass here our data. Shift enter. Now you can see here we get some error. So what's the error? Invalid file path, or okay, this is data. Okay, again let's run it out now. Okay, it say the invalid file path or buffer object type class is a list. So when you are trying to read this file using JSON, if I hover over here, I mean shift tab, you can see just one thing. You can see a valid JSON string, path object or file like objects, any valid string path. It's just taking the string, but we give here a list. So that's why it's not taking, and this data is nothing but the unstructured, right? So that's why it's not taking. So now if I'm trying to running this kind of file, so what you need to do, we need to normalize. So to do that, you can using here the function that's called JSON normalize. It's called the JSON normalize. If I'm trying to use shift enter, now you can see it normalize our data. Now you can see inside u title, it will creating here extra column for that. You can see title, job profile.title1, you can see team lead and the ML developer, right? ML developer. This is how you can actually normalize your data. And also here is the one thing, when you working in the nested data, I mean there is a nested data in your data set. So how can you handle them? See, there's a single one. Now inside that, let's say I have another one. So how can you actually handle them? Yes, you can handle them using the same method that's called the JSON normalizations. You can also give here a property here that's called the max. It's called the what is called max level. I mean how much level it actually go. So if I try to give here max level, let's say max level, okay, equal to 0, and if I try to run it, now you can see here it's not taking the deeper of our JSON data. It's not taking our deeper of the data. It just go inside one single curly brackets and you'll try to execute them. If I try to make it maximum level should be 1, then it will go the deeper. it will go deeper. If it have the another deeper, I mean if it have the another nested JSON file format, it will you need to give you the is 2. if there is a 2 depth of your JSON data, आपका पास आपका जो मैक्स लेवल है ना वो कैसे काम करते हैं देखो, हिंदी में बोल रहा हूँ. व्हेन आई गिव द 0, मैं जब 0 दिया इसको तो क्या हुआ, वो जस्ट गोइंग फॉर द सिंगल वन, सिंगल कर्ली ब्रैकेट्स के अंदर गया, इसके बाद वहां से डेटा रीड किया. लेकिन यहाँ पर तो और भी एक है ना, और भी एक है डेटा, इसको तो रीड करना पड़ेगा, लेकिन वो तो रीड नहीं करेगा क्योंकि यहाँ पर है द मैक्सिमम लेवल है 0. इसलिए फर्स्ट जो है ना इसको रीड करेगा. तो मैं जब इसको चेंज करूंगा 1 पे तो वो क्या करेगा, इसको रीड करेगा क्योंकि 0 इसके बाद है 1. So let's say it have another one, another nested. So to keep here the maximum should be the 2. So this is how the maximum level actually work. Maximum level, it's actually really work. You can also do it then. So when you're dealing with the nested of the data, I mean nested data, you can actually deal with them. So let's copy one from here. Okay, so let's say I am going to paste here another data. So this is nothing but our data. See, in our data, it have a state, it have in the short name, the information, you can see one list, and also inside your countries, okay, it should be countries, and it also should be countries, it having the name, and also inside a list it have another nested JSON file format. Now this is so complex. Now the question is, how can you read them? How can you read them? Simple, we can using here the JSON normalize, because this is a simple list. If I'm trying to checking the type of the data, so let's say I'm going to check the type of my data. So this is nothing but a list. Now we can pass it simply instead of a JSON normalization, because JSON normalize is taking a list. It's taking a list, the Python list. So now what I can do, we can simply using a pd dot JSON normalize, and what I can do, you can pass our data, shift enter. Now you can see here state, Florida, short name, the countries, and info, the governor, right? Info governor. So if I give here the max length, I mean our max level, so let's say max level equal to, let's say I'm going to give it 2. So see, it's not changes anything, it's not changing anything. Let's say I'm going to make it 5. Let's see, is there any change or not? See, there is no changes, there is no changes, because it's having, you can see info.governor changes. That's fine, because we give here the max level. If I try to remove it and also run the file from here, you can see it's also converted this data, it's also converted this data. Now the question is, inside our list, it can read the file, it can read the file. So now the question is, how can you do that? How can you do that? Yes, we can do that. We can do that using one technique. So let's say this is nothing but called the normalizations. So what I can do, we can simply give here our name of our column, I mean which column having the problem, I mean list. We can just simply copy this out, this, let's say countries, it having the countries. And then what I can do, we can give here our state, I mean this state, because inside these countries, what I can do, we are going to accessing the value based on our short name, and inside the info we're going to checking for our governor. So to do that, what I can do, we can simply creating here a list, and inside this list we can give here our state, say state, and also give here our short name, I mean this short name, let's say give it here our short name, let's say short name. इसका बाद मुझे देना पड़ेगा जो लिस्ट है ना, जो लिस्ट का अंदर वैल्यू है हमारा इंफॉर्मेशन रिगार्डिंग द इन्फो एंड ऑल्सो द गवर्नर, क्योंकि कंट्रीज तो कंट्रीज एज ए लिस्ट है, countries as a list, we passing here our list. So if I hover over here, let's see, there is another functionality. Yep, that's called the record part, that's called the record path. Okay, so what I can do, we can give here the path of our records, because this is a list, and then we need to also give here all the list, state, the short name, and also give here the info and the governor, because this is nothing but one also a list. So that's why I need to give here like that, info and also the governor, let's say GOBRRAN, okay, no, like that. So let's try this out. Now you can see here it perfectly work. Name, the name, this one having the name and the populations and the state and also the short name and also the information regarding the governor. So this is how you can actually converting your data. See, when you're trying to, you are not using this one. Let's say I'm going to click here to take another one. Just this data, just copy this out and इसको रीड करते हैं. देखो यहाँ पर क्या होता है, स्टेट है, ओके, दिक्कत की कोई बात नहीं. इसके बाद शॉर्ट नेम है, ओके फाइन. लेकिन कंट्रीज में कुछ प्रॉब्लम हो रही है. कंट्रीज ठीक से जो कंट्रीज का अंदर जो है ना नेम वगैरह जो है, सुमित, पॉपुलेशन, वो अच्छा से रीड नहीं हो पा रही है क्योंकि इट्स जस्ट ए list inside a list. So that's why it can read it properly. So that's what you need to do. We need to using the record parts. So दिक्कत हो रही है किस में, कंट्रीज पे, इसलिए कंट्रीज मुझे देना पड़ेगा. इसके बाद जहाँ पर दिक्कत नहीं हो रही है, आई मीन जो इसका क्या है ना काली ब्रैकेट्स का अंदर है, उसको भी आपको देना पड़ेगा. स्टेट, शॉर्ट नेम, इसके बाद इन्फो एंड द गवर्नर, बिकॉज इन्फो और गवर्नर इज लाइक इज नथिंग बट इनसाइड ए लिस्ट. It's just inside a curly brackets. So that's why you need to also provide it as a list. Provided as a list. So this is how you can actually access the data from here. So अगली वीडियो में हम इसको एक्सटेंड करते हैं. यहाँ पर हम HTML और XML बारे में जानेंगे और how can you read the HTML and also XML file using this Pandas library. So that's it for today now. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial and make sure to subscribe to channels and don't forget to hit the bell icon and I'll be back with another tutorial. So till then, take care and bye bye.